And welcome back to the week of Who Would Win, and it's Wednesday, so we got another Who Would Win, and this one comes to us from Anita. I knew I had a music instructor named Anita. She was my music teacher in course. Yeah, Anita Cooper, a lovely lady. I very much enjoyed her as a teacher. But Anita, you asked, who would win, Willy Wonka or the conductor from Polar Express? Now, let's be very clear right from the get. This is not very much like how I did a versus earlier this week about the Power Ranger theme versus the X-Men theme. This is not a traditional what-if. These two are not fighters, combatants, anything like that. In the rare circumstance these two would have to meet in fisticuffs, I actually give it to the conductor because we see in the song and dance numbers how flexible he is. So he could actually get a one-up on Willy Wonka pretty quick in an actual physical altercation. But these two are not fighter characters. They're more mysterious intellectuals. The man in front of the curtain to protect the man behind the curtain, if you will. Although technically Willy Wonka is the man behind the curtain as well. They are the faces of a representation, if you will. He is the face of the Wonka factory, the Oompa Loompas. He is the face of all this grandiose chocolate making, whereas the conductor is the face of the Polar Express, which is another face to the North Pole and Santa to some degree. And the guy works directly with Santa. So the question is, how do we compare these guys in a versus? What would be the context of the versus scenario? Who is the smarter individual? Who could outwit the other? Who did their job more effectively? It really is a weird kind of scenario here. For me, we'll look at it at several phases. One, if in the rare physical altercation they would have, it would probably go to the conductor. We just see that he's a more flexible, more capable individual, physically speaking, than Wonka is. Well, we can look at this from a mastermind perspective. Who is the more strategic? Who is the more cunning? Who would outwit who in an interaction? And then C3, you sunk my battleship. We can look at it from who effectively did their job better. So first off, again, the physical altercation, we've already discussed it. I think the conductor would actually win. He's already proven that he's just the more physically capable among the two of them. Who is the more intellectually beneficial? Who is the more intellectually superior between the two of them? Who's got the cunning, the wit, the strategy between them? That becomes a bit more difficult to say, but I would probably lean that aspect to Wonka. Now, the reason for this is we see that from the very get, Wonka had a plan. Now, it was a plan that he probably would keep doing over and over again until he found the right person, and he just lucked out and found Charlie the first time around. Yeah, that's the thing, too. If Charlie hadn't been the good person like he had hoped for, we probably just would have seen him do it again and again and again and again. Hopefully not getting the same kids. Which, again, out of 5 tickets out of the entire world of Wonka bars, I mean, maybe you would have gotten, Violet Beauregard again. Not Violet. Veruca Salt again because of just, they haven't shut the bloody chocolate bars. Maybe you get someone like that again. But I don't think you'd see an Augustus Gloop. You wouldn't see a Violet Beauregard again. You definitely wouldn't see a Charlie Bucket again. And you wouldn't see a Ned TV again. So, yeah, she might be the only one, assuming she lived, which isn't very much implied they lived. In the Wonka version, in the Tim Burton version, they actually do show they lived. He probably would have just done it all again, or just done it in a different way. But he clearly had a plan from the get. He even knew that most of these kids were probably going to go rogue at some point and cause their own demise, their own upset, if you will. And he was like, stop, come back. I'm on chocolate, help him. Help, police, murder. The suspense is terrible. I hope it lasts. It's clear this guy knew this shit was going to happen on some level, and he was prepared for it. And he was not, as far as I know, he was not going to murder them. He was just, it's them, unfortunately, being, terrible people and getting what came to them. So, and you see it there at the beginning. Oh, don't worry, they'll be fine. But maybe they'll be a little wiser next time. Like, yeah, it's clear he thought this all out. Whereas the conductor's really just doing his job. He's certainly got a little bit of like wisdom and insight, but he doesn't have a grand master plan at all. He's more just he's more just doing what he's doing to get, because he's not focusing solely on these, I think, three kids it was, the main character, the little girl, and the nerdy guy who's voiced by Mandark. Yeah, that was Mandark's voice. So I'm like, oh my god, Mandark. So yeah, he's not focusing solely on him. He's got to focus on everyone there, whereas Wonka just had to focus on the core five he had. And by the end, it's not really him who's done anything. It's more the journey the kids have gone on, and then him talking with Santa himself. So, yeah, in terms of wit and intellect and strategy, Wonka's got the edge there, I think. But ultimately, it's about who did their job, what their plan ultimately was, be it job or actual strategic mastermind for taking over your factory, call it as you will. Who did that more effectively? Because they're 1-1 right now. For me, that's a coin toss, because when you're actually talking about doing your job, well, the conductor did his job perfectly fine. He did it very effectively, because he's done this God knows how many times. He also has the little benefit of having some level of magical assist. We can tell that for obvious reasons. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit, just because of the nature of the Polar Express and everything like that. Wonka doesn't necessarily have magic on his side, but he does have a lot of interesting tech. He has machines and technology that can make a piece of gum taste like a 5-course meal. Apparently he's able to put shoes in a liquid, and that will make food better. So, yeah, he's clearly evolved his food technology to a level that was well beyond even today's standards. He did his job to a T. Wonka, that's the ultimate question here. Did Wonka do what he was planning to do to a T? Well, to answer that, you have to ask yourself, what was he planning to do? He was planning to find a kid, basically take him as an apprentice, more or less, move the family, and ultimately raise him to be they're trained him to be a successor. And to do that, he had to weed out these 5, suitable kids. Hopefully suitable kids. And like I said, the guy clearly knew what was going on basically the entire time. He was never surprised when someone did something wrong and their comeuppance came. In fact, he just stood there, like in the whole Violet Beauregard "I Want the World" spiel. He's standing there the whole time, even when she's knocking stuff around, even having stuff draped on him. So yeah, he clearly knew what was going on, and he got his result at the end. He still had to test Charlie because he knew Charlie did break the rules, albeit the rules were very terribly laid out. Rules we didn't see, the rules wrong, sir, wrong, etc., etc. You stole for the lifting drink, and then he had to test Charlie. Now, you can make an argument that he was a bit more of a dick than in fact, there's no argument about it. He was a lot more of a dick than the conductor was by a long margin. But it was all for a greater good. And again, he got the result he wanted. So who did their job more effectively? Well, it's actually they're very much on the cusp here, because the conductor is the employee doing his job. Now, you could make an argument that there's a scenario that happens later in the movie where the kids kind of get separated and things just start going wrong for the kids. Obviously, they get back to it when it's all said and done. And you could make an argument that is a slight against him for doing his job. He's not keeping track of these kids. These kids didn't. He's got to keep track of an entire train, admittedly, but he didn't keep track of the kids, and they almost got in trouble and almost got hurt. So you can make an argument there. Whereas Wonka's plan is weird because he's not the employee; he's the owner, And this is all to everything basically went down the way he wanted it to go down. Maybe he didn't want these kids to really get hurt. And he even said, it's like, they'll be fine. Whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. Maybe they got turned into the specialty chocolate. Gooey. Is that eyeball? Anyway, this tastes Swiss for some reason, a little fatty. Or was it Sweden? I can't remember. Was he Swiss or Sweden? I think he was Swiss, Augustus. I could be wrong though. Either way, I think he was one or the other. For me, I think the fact that Wonka pretty much had it all played out, whereas the Conductor did let a couple kids out of his sight and they got into some shenanigans. In fact, those kids were out of his sight pretty much. Granted, he's running the entire thing, but there are other people on board too that could be, that work under him, so they could be keeping eyes on these kids as well. The Oompa Loompas work under Wonka, and so does Slugworth, but that's not Slugworth, but I can't remember his actual name. But the guy who was pretending to be Slugworth, they all work for him, but the Oompa Loompas are doing their jobs. Like, their jobs aren't to watch the kids. And admittedly, you can make an argument that the people on the board of the Polar Express's jobs aren't to watch the kids. But then the question is, whose freaking job is it to watch the kids on the Polar Express? Especially when you have possible doubters like the main kid. And they go wandering. They're at that age. Like, they're not. It's not like they're mature enough to be like, maybe we should just stay here. No, sometimes they say we should just stay here. No, let's go wandering. The more I think on it, I'm gonna lean towards Wonka, because the Conductor, it's never laid out who's supposed to be watching these freaking kids. So I have to assume the Conductor holds responsibility on that on some level. And the fact is, these kids went out of his sight multiple times. He did get them every now and then. But, they get separated at one point, and there's a problem. I can't remember exactly what it was. There was some sort of train scene. It had to do with one of the train cars. So, yeah, ultimately all works out for both parties, Wonka and the Conductor. But because of that, and because the shenanigans happened, were not supposed to happen. And that's, I think, the key difference here. Wonka and Charlie and Grandpa Jack, sorry, I was going to say Uncle. Grandpa Jack, they did wander up, but again, this is all Wonka's plan. He was planning for kids to misbehave and to get in trouble, whereas the Conductor isn't planning for that. And I think that's the key difference. One had to deal with stuff that wasn't intended, while the other, everything that played out in the film was to plan. So my money for the win in this is going to go to Wonka. Now, again, in an actual physical fight that would never happen, technically speaking, I think it'd be the Conductor. He's just more physically fit. He's more physically abled. Otherwise, Wonka is the more intelligent individual. And Wonka is, I think, just his ultimate style, goal, plan, and methodology about going about it worked a bit better than what the Conductor did. Not to say anything went terribly wrong with the Conductor and everything like that, but the fact is, some things were happening that were not on his docket, was not on the schedule. So yeah, I would go with Willy Wonka in this. But this is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below if you feel different. If you do, that's cool. We are all fans here. We can all have an opinion. Till then, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you folks for the next one.